sports. You say, hey, when there's a problem, you call a man. The Democrats can't even tell you what a man is.
So when you hear Walz brag about how much of a man he is, what does that tell you?
I think there might be a little bit of a cope there, you could say. There's a little bit, he has to remind us how masculine he is, trying to not even be able to load a shotgun or...
We're getting scary close to people justifying totalitarian measures.
I think we need to push back on this.
Tim Walz in the campaign trail was literally saying free speech doesn't include hate speech and misinformation.
There's no guarantee to free speech on misinformation or hate speech, and especially around our democracy.
Hey man, you, because everything that we called misinformation just a few years ago, it's on the front page of the New York Times.
Joe Rogan and Charlie Kirk didn't just challenge Tim Walz. They tore through his arguments like a tornado ripping apart a paper house. It wasn't a debate. It was a total takedown, powered by sharp facts, dry humor, and no patience for political nonsense. Walz came in with catchy slogans, but Rogan and Kirk brought hard-hitting logic. By the end, there was nothing left but silence and the sound of broken talking points falling apart.
One rule for Facebook and you have a different rule for Twitter. There has to be a responsibility that is placed on these social media sites to understand their power.
The New York Times just printed a thing. Turns out we were lied to.
They are directly speaking to millions and millions of people without any level of oversight or regulation. And that has to stop.
Yeah, you lie.
The most masculine thing that someone can do in America today is stand up for women that are not able to stand up for themselves.
Right.
So while Tim Walz is going on Gavin Newsom's podcast, attacking me, by the way, saying that I'm a bad guy, well, I'm sorry, Governor Walz. One thing that we don't have in common is, unlike you in Minnesota, I, every single day, am actually fighting for female privacy in locker rooms and that women's sports will not have men in them. Real men stand up for women when they're not.
Joe Rogan and Charlie Kirk aren't exactly known for holding back when it comes to calling out political nonsense, and when they both set their sights on Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, it was like watching two expert mechanics dismantle a broken machine in front of a live audience. Rogan came in with the hammer of common sense and life experience, while Kirk brought the chisel of sharp facts and relentless logic. Together, they turned Walz's political record into a real-time cautionary tale.
Say you could fight any Trump supporter?
Yeah, he says he kicked their ass, and they're scared of him because he could fix a truck. Like they're threatened by his masculinity. I know how to fix a truck. So he said, like, do you? I bet you don't.
The lady doth protest too much.
I bet you don't.
I fear.
I bet if I bring a broken truck to you and a bag of tools, you're.
Did Tim Walz really say he could take on any Trump supporter? That he could kick their ass and they're scared of him because he knows how to fix a truck? Come on. That's not real toughness, that's just playing dress up. He said, I can fix a truck, but let's be honest, if you handed him a broken carburetor and a toolbox, he'd be on YouTube in 5 minutes searching how to be a man in 10 steps. It's overcompensating, plain and simple. Joe Rogan, he sees through that kind of act right away. He's not impressed by tough guy talk or rehearsed sound bites. He's seen too many phony performances. Rogan wants real, not rehearsed. And with Tim Walz, the problem is the act. Joe doesn't just call him out. He breaks him down like a bad conspiracy theory that somehow ended up in office.
Tim Walz doing the exact same thing.
Right.
Exact same thing, and
Yes.
he said, of course it's a Nazi salute. He said that.
Right.
We spent 3 days debating, having them trying to debate that President Musk gave a Nazi salute. Of course he did. But that is a distraction.
This is how crazy things have gotten. Like,
It's
Joe Rogan sees Tim Walz as a leader who cares more about how he looks than how his decisions affect real people. He laughs at how much of Walz's pandemic response felt like a performance. While Rogan has spent hours talking to real doctors, scientists, and everyday people, Walz acted like he was auditioning for a TV role called America's Top Crisis Manager. It didn't feel like real leadership, it felt like acting. And Joe's not falling for it.
video?
No.
This is what people love about Donald Trump. The fact that he would say this.
But unfortunately, Governor Walz isn't here himself, but don't worry, he'll say that he was. He's going to say he was. I used to think the Democrats were crazy for saying that men have period, but then I met Tim.
Have you seen that clip? It shows exactly why people like Donald Trump, because he actually says what he's thinking. Governor Walz isn't here to defend himself, though he'd probably claim he was. Joe Rogan jokes, I used to think Democrats were crazy for saying men get periods. Then I met Tim Walz. Under Walz, Minnesota shut down gyms and small businesses, but kept places like Walmart wide open. Rogan, with his usual mix of humor and common sense, pointed out how ridiculous that was. How does a virus skip Target aisles but go wild in a barbershop? Then there was Walz's obsession with emergency powers. Joe compared it to a toddler clutching a remote, refusing to let go. No flexibility, no balance, just non-stop rules, fear, and overreach. And the crazier it got, the more Walz doubled down. Rogan just leaned in, amused, like he was watching a bad sci-fi movie fall apart. But Joe didn't just make jokes, he got serious, too. He called out how Walz's political games hurt real people, small businesses shut down, jobs lost, and Minnesotans left to deal with the fallout.
100% right with Tim Walz.
I know I'm doing something right when the Fox News crowd is all bitching at me like crazy. Like, I'm loving it.
That guy was almost the vice president of the United States.
Elon Musk was crying last week. Tim is being mean to me, you know, like, yeah.
I'm sure you've seen that thing where it shows Obama saying, I need a...
Joe Rogan nailed it when talking about Tim Walz. No corrections needed. Walz once bragged, I know I'm doing something right when Fox News is yelling at me. I love it. Really, Tim. As if Elon Musk cried because of you. Let's be real. And yes, this is the same guy who was nearly chosen as vice president. You've probably seen that moment where Obama says, I need a vice, and suddenly things get weird. During Walz's leadership, families were left confused by lockdown rules that changed every week. He kept saying everything was fine, like someone forcing the wrong puzzle pieces together and calling it a masterpiece. Joe Rogan saw through the act. With his usual mix of humor and real-world smarts, he called it what it was, a mess created by another smooth-talking politician. Then Charlie Kirk stepped in, less comedy, more courtroom. While Joe made jokes, Charlie brought facts. He broke down Walz's economic record, like a prosecutor reading a list of failures. Under Walz, Minnesota became an example of what not to do, driving away investors and crushing small businesses. Other states were reopening, but Walz was still giving speeches full of climate buzzwords while local shops begged to survive. Charlie didn't hide his reaction. It was part shock, part laughter, the kind of laugh you give when things are so bad you don't know whether to laugh or cry.
Walz cocksucker, if that guy got into power, like if Kamala died and Tim Walz, Tampon Tim, was our fucking president, you know how crazy this country would be? That weirdo who puts tampons in the boys' room, and what about our joy? Like he's a complete pathological liar. Like a complete liar. Lied about being in Tiananmen Square, lied about being a fucking...
Charlie Kirk calls Tim Walz's style leadership by press release, where the government keeps spending more money. But no one really knows what's going on. Then he focuses on Walz's handling of crime, calling it a never-ending joke. Under Walz, cities in Minnesota started to feel like they were being run by someone who learned everything about police work from internet posts and protest slogans. Crime went up, police morale went down, and the streets turned into experiments for ideas that didn't work. While all this happened, Walz gave feel-good speeches about unity, but acted like law enforcement was just an option you could turn on or off. When the George Floyd riots broke out, Charlie says Walz didn't lead, he froze. Instead of stepping in to take control, he backed away. Charlie compares it to someone holding a fire extinguisher but standing there reading the instructions while the building burns. His response wasn't just weak, it was dangerous. Charlie wraps it up by saying Walz acted like a substitute teacher with a guitar and good intentions, but no plan for the classroom that was already in chaos.
Saw that JD Vance was weird. Yeah. Remember that one?
And then there's weirds everywhere.
Weird. Oh, you don't want a weird guy. Meanwhile, you have Tim Walz is your VP. Weird. You don't think that guy's weird? He's weird in every way. Yeah. The way he walks, the way he waves his hands.
Yeah, he reminds me of the clown emoji.
He's a bizarre guy.
He's a strange dude.
I just don't understand why they made that choice.
Yeah, it gives the creeps.
I just don't understand why they made that choice. There's a lot of other people that are qualified. I don't know why. I read that Kamala Harris made that decision.
When the talk turns to education, Charlie Kirk doesn't hold back. He slams the way Minnesota schools have fallen apart under Tim Walz, with test scores dropping while political messaging took over. Reading and math were pushed aside in favor of buzzwords and ideology. Instead of focusing on literacy, Walz filled classrooms with diversity officers and lectures on privilege. Charlie jokes, "You can't spell, but at least you can write a journal about how privileged your backpack is." His point. Schools under Walz stopped teaching the basics, and the only thing growing was the number of useless programs and extra administrators. Then Joe Rogan jumps back in, mocking Walz's leadership like it's a bad survival movie. He says, Walz is the kind of guy who spends 10 minutes writing a safety email, while someone nearby is bleeding. It's all talk, no action. Joe also points out that leaders like Walz seem more focused on getting likes and praise online than actually helping real people. Today's leadership, he says, feels more like trying to go viral, except it affects people's lives.
And they bring in this other guy who's radical from Minnesota. That's the vice president, who he believes a lot of wild things. One of them is transgender surgery for people who are under 13. Another one is abortion up until 9 months.
Ooh.
Yeah. He changed the Minnesota state flag to make it look like the Somali flag. That stuff scares them.
And Walz. He's running Minnesota like he's more focused on what's trending online than solving real issues. Joe Rogan puts it plainly, leaders like Walz aren't looking for real answers. They just want approval from people who already agree with them. No tough talks or hard truths, just applause from the same crowd. Then Charlie Kirk adds that Walz acts more like a professor than a governor. All ideas, no real results. Minnesota isn't a classroom, it's a real place, with real people. Joe and Charlie don't just criticize Walz, they take him apart. Joe uses sharp jokes, and Charlie backs it up with facts, exposing how Walz talks like a reformer but leads like someone who stumbled into the job. What makes their critique so powerful? It's not just funny, it's also backed by truth.
That's with Newsom. Why don't you go throw the pigskin with Walz? What do you say?
I think it's a great idea. I'll fly on up to Minneapolis. We'll see what it's all about, Governor Walz. You're Mr. Coach. You're the one that can.
Walz built his image on catchy slogans, a friendly smile, and a media that rarely asked tough questions. But when Joe Rogan and Charlie Kirk take a closer look, that polished image falls apart fast. And the best part? No shouting, flashy graphics, or drama, just two guys with microphones, common sense, and no patience for leaders who mistake emotional appeal for real results. They don't just criticize Walz, they tear apart his whole approach, like it's a collection of bad ideas in a museum. And the tour. It's free, funny, and brutally honest. But Charlie doesn't stop there. He points out Walz's odd obsession with trying to create a perfect society through strict government control. As Charlie puts it, Walz acts like he just read a sci-fi book about a perfect world and decided it was a checklist. Everything becomes a test. Every problem turns into a trial run. How many committees can you form before people notice nothing's actually getting done? Charlie sums it up. Walz thinks government knows best, more than parents, business owners, or police. And that attitude, he says, is exactly why things keep falling apart.
It would be very similar to Barack Obama throwing a baseball. I don't think it would be a sight that would be easy on the eyes. That's right, I could throw quite a tight spiral. Hey, Governor Walz, let's go have a game of catch. We'll see.
Charlie says Walz is great at pretending, better at selling a version of reality than dealing with the real one. Once a leader thinks he's the smartest person in every room, he stops listening. And when that happens, he starts losing touch. That's when Joe Rogan jumps back in. He calls out how Walz tries to make every mistake look like part of some genius plan. Joe compares it to a magician pulling out a rabbit but then trying to convince everyone it was supposed to be a porcupine. Joe says Walz's speeches sound like cheesy motivational posters, positive but totally out of touch with the real problems happening around him. And it's not just what Walz says, it's when he says it. He always shows up late, acting surprised by disasters like he didn't see them coming. Joe sums it up perfectly. It's like watching someone break a window, then give a speech about being careful with glass. It's not just out of touch, it's tiring. And the worst part, Walz still believes people are buying it.
Just weird and how avoidable it was.
100% avoidable, but pathological liars, people that are habitual liars, they just lie all the time.
It was just weird. And the worst part, it didn't have to happen, it was totally avoidable. Charlie points it out. People who lie all the time aren't just dishonest, they lie about everything. Constantly, without even thinking. And when it comes to dodging blame, Walz is a pro. Every time something goes wrong, he blames someone else, the federal government, local leaders, the weather, even Mercury in retrograde. Charlie jokes, if Walz tripped over his own shoelaces, he'd blame the shoe companies and call for a state investigation into walking. Accountability? That's just a word he uses during press conferences when the cameras are on. Then Joe Rogan jumps in and hits the real issue, how out of touch Walz is with regular people in Minnesota. There's no real empathy or understanding. Every choice feels like it was run through consultants and social media trends. Joe nails it. It's like trying to run a farm based on Yelp reviews. Everything sounds good, but behind the scenes, the tractor's on fire and the cows are gone. And then Charlie ends it with one last brutal line. So sharp. The silence afterward says it all.
And have declined problems at his age, but at her age, she's just dumb.
Biden and
I think I
Biden
was
saying
that
I
on
need
your,
a vice president dumber than me.
great.
Kamala Harris may be the dumbest person ever elected vice president in American history.
Kamala saying I need a vice president dumber than me. And it's Walz. Men have tampons.
We have a lot of accomplishment. We haven't taken adequate credit for it, frankly. We got to do a better job of getting the word out about what we have accomplished and who did it.
You got to lose because we got to break.
Walz isn't really leading a state, he's just running press conferences. He cares more about managing the story than actually solving problems. His real skill? Making big political failures sound softer by talking about them gently, as if a quiet voice makes things less serious. But no matter how calm he sounds, the damage is still real. Minnesota, once known for being strong, sensible, and well-run, now feels like the backdrop for Walz's ongoing lesson in how not to lead. This isn't leadership. It's a case study in failure. And that's when Rogan and Kirk go beyond roasting. They deliver a full political autopsy. The cause of death: too much control, not enough connection. A governor who confused having power with getting things done, and thought telling a good story was the same as making real progress.